Coming from ICEYE, a global imagery company, I'm here to hopefully inspire you with some case studies. Before I continue, I would like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people who I typically reside on and the Eora Nation that we're here today. Now, I'll be talking about ICEYE's expansive constellation of SAR satellites, how we're unlocking unparalleled access to data in all weather conditions. And as an Esri Gold partner, I'll show you how we've been integrating with ArcGIS across the globe, taking you on a bit of a whirlwind through some case studies that we have internationally and here in Australia. Now, I'll start by giving an overview into ICEYE and SAR imagery and our process for our solutions before jumping into those case studies. So ICEYE is a new space Earth observation company headquartered in Finland. We actually build and operate the world's largest constellation of synthetic aperture radar, or SAR satellites. Now, these are equipped with world-leading imaging flexibility. We actually have over 38 satellites that pass overhead in Sydney about 14 times a day. And we have over 20 satellites planned in the next calendar year. So this is more than any other commercial SAR provider. What's really exciting is that we build these satellites in Europe and then we launch them through SpaceX in the US. And being in Australia, you can benefit from all this activity that's happening overseas. Now, you may have heard of SAR before, but I doubt many of you in the room have actually used it. Has anyone here used SAR before? Oh, we actually have a few hands. Amazing. Now, sounds like for most of you, though, you may have never heard of SAR or synthetic aperture radar or used it before. So I wanted to share what's actually special about it. SAR, or these satellites that we focus on, have radar functionality. And this is useful when optical or aerial or traditional imagery sources are unavailable due to weather or the time of day. SAR Earth observation actually sends out a pulse of microwaves that can see through clouds, through darkness, through smoke, and volcanic ash. And this is incredibly powerful for disaster intelligence, where emergency response demands speed and agility to monitor events at any time. So that's been most of our focus. We actually have 3 lines of business in the company: missions, data, and solutions. Now, our missions team help with the purchase of whole satellites. So if you're interested in launching a satellite, come chat to us. But for most people, they're interested in the data. Now, we have a data team that helps through the tasking and purchase and capture of raw SAR imagery. But for most users, SAR is really difficult to use. And most organizations that we work with don't have the skills or capability to be able to use raw SAR. So that's why we now produce ready-to-use solutions in our 3rd line of business. This helps to eliminate the complexity of processing the raw SAR data, simplifying the workflows for end users, and saving costs and resources. Now, these solutions are high-resolution analytic data sets of near real-time information that can integrate directly into your GIS systems. And we've focused these solutions on natural catastrophes and disasters. So we actually go out of our way to task our satellites to capture and process the SAR imagery into these GIS-ready data sets focused on disasters. So far, we offer a suite of these data sets under solutions. First of all, focused on floods and bushfires, and we have ongoing research into volcanoes, wind, cyclone, and earthquake damage. Our key solution dataset at the moment is our flood insights. This is where we provide near real-time based observation intelligence of flood depth and extent. So extent being the outline of the flood and the depth being the amount in centimetres that the flood is currently covering. Now, unlike traditional flood modelling, we're actually utilising real observational data from space instead of any what-if projections. And this allows us to deliver these GIS-ready layers that you can trust and update them daily at a 3 to 4 metre resolution. So these insights are at the building, community, and asset level, allowing organisations around the globe to assess these impacts as a disaster unfolds. I wanted to go through now the process. How do we actually do this? We actually have a team of meteorologists, about 4 of them around the globe, and they monitor a 4-day ahead flood risk model. We then task our satellites, so we actually have little thrusters and magnets on board to move them around the Earth, and we then capture where there is risk of floods. We then combine this SAR imagery with multiple other layers to validate the results within 24 hours of a flood event. Our analysis is then augmented with any available open source and aerial imagery, and we actually scour the web for videos and photos on social media and other information that we can use to validate. We also use river and tidal gauges, watershed and elevation information. And the result is a vector file for flood extent and a raster file for the flood depth. And these are updated every 24 hours over the full course of a flood event. Now, I know most of you in here are data people, hopefully, so I've targeted this presentation to you. If you look at this graph, you'll see our typical timeline. The vertical lines in red illustrate where we capture our SAR imagery. Now, a key benefit of having a large constellation of satellites is that we're able to capture quite often across the course of a flood. Now, we then have river gauges with the average here in black. Now, while trying to capture during a peak of a flood is quite challenging, it is possible with more and more SAR satellites, more as we grow our constellation and our revisit rate, we're able to significantly improve our accuracy. But if you remember, if you're using other methods like open source that may not be able to capture as often, you may completely miss the flood. And if you're only using a single aerial or optical imagery capture, you may completely miss the peak, of course, due to cloud cover or darkness. So instead of having one single source of information, we're capturing, we're combining, and putting forward this product that comes from multiple different sources. And you'll see that this data comes alive once it's integrated into the ArcGIS platform. So our data has been used across multiple different environments for visualization, exploration during disasters, and then web development and analysis. We provide collaborations and group sharing capabilities in ArcGIS Online to deliver hosted feature layers for the flood extent and hosted tile layers for the depths. And then we actually have partners who help to offer integration and professional services to help then deliver this information across the ArcGIS platform. So this includes Enterprise, Pro, and lots of ArcGIS apps that you see on screen like story maps, dashboards, experience builder. And we also have an API that can be leveraged for developers to develop custom solutions. Before I jump into the case studies, I just really wanted to emphasize how world-leading this is. This product is only about 3 years old, and already we're seeing that this is enhancing situational awareness, improving the support and effective risk management for many governments and insurance companies, enriching existing workflows for emergency management, and reducing the friction during disasters, and deriving really critical insights. Of course, you don't have to take that from me. I'd like to actually show you what that looks like with some global case studies. Now, of course, I mentioned we work with governments, insurance companies, and humanitarian efforts. We actually have a people satellite. This was crowdfunded to help with the war efforts in Ukraine. And last year, we were actually able to help with the Karakova Dam breach. Unfortunately, the Russians bombed a dam in Ukraine that caused significant flooding. We were able to provide flood insights to the government within 24 hours to help provide those relief agencies to support during the war and affected communities with their response efforts in this location. We work with the ESRI's disaster response program. And actually, just this year, we were working with Jeff back in Redlands in the US. And during the hurricanes that happened this year, Jeff said that we were the only company that knew where it was flooded in North Carolina, thanks to our imagery. This was because there was such thick cloud cover coming in that SAR was the only option to see through those clouds. Now, many responding agencies in this location were actually accessing our data already, and that information was what they were using to understand where their buildings and their infrastructure had been flooded. So there's been quite a number of hurricanes, but the main ones were Helene and Milton. We actually captured over 150 SAR satellite images during those storms, and our results showed over 160,000 buildings that were damaged across the East Coast during Helene, and then 180,000 during Milton in Florida alone. What we could then take with that data is that could then be delivered into these systems, and our Flood Insights was actually integrated into operations centers through the US government and FEMA. You can see here they were showing VP Kamala Harris our data and the Samaritarians Perth, and they were able to swiftly identify the hardest hit communities and deploy their resources efficiently. So rather than just saying this is where it was flooded, they could actually say there's this many buildings over 3 meters that need assistance right now. So this actually resulted in 60 helicopter flights that then delivered crucial supplies to North Carolina and Tennessee just that day. But this is not our first rodeo. Back when we started, we covered Hurricane Ian, which unfortunately also delivered quite a nasty storm during 2022. Now, it covered the whole Florida coast in clouds for about 14 days. And so during our coverage of the event, which was over 14 days, we tasked 180 SAR satellite images. Now remember, if you were using a traditional source that maybe only captures images every 14 days, you may only have one image. And if you're using other SAR providers, you may have to purchase every single one of those 180 data sets. So we're able to take all that guesswork out and just deliver the end result. Now, we actually covered about 70% of Florida's coastline. And the results were we were then able to overlay that with building information and identify over 2,000 buildings that were over 3 meters in depth that needed immediate assistance. We could then go back post-event, and we actually collaborated with the US Geological Survey to understand where their high watermarks were and the on-ground information that they collected to validate our accuracy. And we found that we had over 97% accuracy when it came to our results, which was amazing. And that then fed into further improving our information. Now, of course, it's been a busy flood season all around the globe. I wanted to share with you some more case studies. If we look at Europe, if you remember, over the past 3 months, we've had Storm Boris in Poland and Austria, and we've even had flooding in Spain, the flash flood that happened this month. So we worked with European agencies to look at both of these events. Storm Boris was actually our largest flood that we've covered this year. We captured over 446 images, again, through cloud. And we were able to incorporate this with 829 other different data points. So an insane amount of data. We've also captured information across the Rio Grande. And by delivering this to the government in Brazil, they're actually considering moving a military Air Force base because of the effects of flooding. We've collaborated with other Esri distributors across the globe, including in Taiwan with IDT, where we covered typhoons, where we've looked at Typhoon Gemi in July, where we actually covered nearly 100 different data points there, and we're able to actually identify this building that had been flooded, and of course all the cars in that parking lot were totaled. And we were actually able to confirm that the correct information was showing up in our data set in this ArcGIS dashboard that was shared. Now, we've worked, of course, across the ditch in New Zealand. We worked earlier last year during Cyclone Gabriel with Eagle technology and FENS, the Fire and Emergency New Zealand government agency. They were actually able to take our flood insights and integrate it into their COP, or their Common Operating Platform, allowing local councils to benefit and plan during that devastating event. And of course, coming back around now to Australia, we've of course helped out, and we've been working with NEMA, the National Emergency Agency, and Geoscience Australia to better be able to provide this data sets to federal and state governments here in Australia. So we covered the La Nina summer, which unfortunately cost us about $4.7 billion in losses and 23 lives. We were able to cover the peak of the storm, which compared to other methods like the Copernicus was unable to see that peak. So we're able to deliver insights that you see here in blue compared to the Copernicus or Sentinel missions in red that showed the true extent of the flood in Lismore. And we were able to get this up to the top dogs that you see on screen there. Now, we've covered a range of different events since then. This includes Cyclone Jasper in Cairns. Now, we were able to help validate our data set. You'll see in the bottom corner there, that's Cairns Airport. And we were getting reports of, unfortunately, crocodiles that they were having to rescue out of that airport that was flooded. So that was a really great way to validate the actual depth was enough to have crocodiles across the runway. And I wanted to show you an example recently from Cyclone Megan that came through remote communities across Queensland and Northern Territory. Some of our data is showing information about places that weren't even covered through previous data sets before. So again, this includes remote Indigenous communities up in the Gulf of Carpentaria. You'll see here, this is the raw SAR image. I mentioned that our satellites, they send out a pulse, and when they hit water, it actually scatters, causing a dark black colour. And we can actually see that through time in the images, that as the flood grew, we can see that, and we were able to then, of course, extract that information and provide that to decision makers to help these communities that needed it most. I mentioned that we have other data as well. I wanted to give you just a quick sneak peek into some of the research and development. Now, we do have a bushfire data set. In 2023, we were looking at damage detection, and within 3 hours, we were able to provide data during the Lahaina, Hawaii fires. Now, we were able to do building damage assessment on over 2,000 buildings with about 87% accuracy. So we're continuing to develop out this product in Australia. And of course, we're looking into landslides and landslips. You'll see on screen here an example from Switzerland of a landslide that nearly crashed into a Swiss Alps village that we were able to show a before and after change detection. And in New Zealand, we've already covered over 150 landslides that have happened this year alone. And I wanted to take you back to where it all started. ICEYE was actually formed because we are the eye in the sky to capture different information about ice movements up in the Arctic. Now, of course, we've expanded this to different disasters, but we continue to monitor globally glaciers and volcanoes around the world. So to close up, I wanted to just reiterate that we have this comprehensive suite of natural catastrophe event insights that are enabling governments and insurance industries and other, hopefully, your agencies in the future to achieve substantially better outcomes for their stakeholders. We're looking to continue to grow our constellations and these new solution data sets. And I wanted to close to give you a call to action. We actually offer some sample data and a live dashboard in the ArcGIS Living Atlas. All you have to do is search flood in the ArcGIS Living Atlas, and you'll be able to find a dashboard that shows the locations that we're currently monitoring and analysing for floods across the globe. So give it a search and let us know your thoughts. I encourage you to come visit our booth if you'd like to hear any more information about the case studies that I've mentioned today or any further technical information. Thank you so much.